Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvo Andhakaro Vai Rukarastvo Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are back to reviewing the basic steps of Nididhyasanam, the underlying underpinnings of what it means and what we should do in our life to meditate. What are the elements of the meditation? So this is what we were looking at. So here, as a reminder, this is given in the verses number 102 and 103 of the Aparoksha Anubhuti. And we've already gone through that, but just to reiterate. So 102 says, Yamo hi niyamas tyago maunam deshatah kalata asanam moola bandhascha deha samyam cha driksthitihi prana samyamanam chaiva pratyaharascha dharana atmadhyanam samadhischa proktani angani vaikramat. So it gives you the 15 different steps of Nididhyasanam, and the one that we already started on, I haven't finished it, this is one we need to do today, is what is called Driksthiti. So we have done Yama, Niyama, Tyaga, Maunam, Desha, Kala, Asana, Moolabandha, Deha Samyam, and then Driksthiti. So this is what we are doing. So if you recall, in the classes that we were reviewing this before we did a couple of weeks of meditation, I had mentioned that in the way Swami Akhandananda ji presents the what you might call progress towards clarity of the self-knowledge. That's the best I can talk about. Progress towards the clarity. How do you in a way, something like, you are looking at something and it is not very clear what you are looking at. You are able to get the outlines of it, but it is still not very clear. So you need to figure out what is it that you need to do to make it clear. Most of the time it is just if the instrument that you are using for looking at a vastu, it may be dirty. So it may need some cleaning. So the more cleaning you do, the better off you will be, and then finally you are able to see exactly what the vastu looks like. Okay? So in some senses, the advice by the Mahatmas like Swami Akhandananda ji and others, who have really gone through this process of gaining clarity about who they are, what is going on, what is the very nature of Paramatma, really speaking, the very nature of God, nature of Ishvara. This is what clarity is, and eventually it is nothing but your own inner self, not even inner self, yourself. So the clarity, the progress towards the clarity is given by the Mahatmas because they have gone through all of this. We all go through the same process. When we are born, we are completely ignorant, and then slowly we begin to get more insight towards what is going on, who am I, where did I come from, what's my future, all of those kinds of things. So in clarifying the self-knowledge, what you might say the progress towards self-knowledge, it's not really a progress because you don't have to go anywhere, but it is just that the vision of the truth is somewhat obscured. And the methods to clarify it, to clean the, supposing you have you have some kind of an instrument that it is dirty, then to clean it, even the most important instrument that we have, which is our eyes. And so sometimes you have a cataract that needs to be removed. There's nothing wrong with the eye itself, it is still very healthy, but the cataract obscures the clarity of your vision. Anyway, all I'm saying is that if you recall 2-3 weeks ago when we were going through this, I had mentioned it to you, and this made a very big, very deep impression on me because I've been reading a lot of Swami Akhandananda ji's books, as you know. I've so that already, and I'm gathering what are the key steps that people had to go through in gaining clarity about the self. And this has been enormously helpful to me. And it is not just one person talking, but also the biographies of all the Mahatmas. There is I think I may have told you that I have been in correspondence with Swami Tejomayananda ji, who used to head up the Chinmaya mission, and he is now teaching and just staying in the Powai ashram. And so there is a friend of mine who's a student of Chinmaya mission, and so she had lost her husband, and so she stayed with Swami Tejomayananda, and somehow we got her to correspond because we both shared our language of Hindi. We are both Hindi speaking, and we also shared our love of some of the Mahatmas that he was recommending, and I independently found that out from Swami Akhandananda ji, and so he and I have really been communicating with respect to what books we should read and so on. And the reason I'm saying all this, I'm sorry, it's not just germane to this subject matter, although I'm leading up to it, is that there is one book that he gave me, sent to me just recently, about 2 months ago. It's called Pavana Prasanga. It's in Hindi, all in Hindi. It's called Pavana Prasanga. This is a remarkable book. What it is a compendium of all the Mahatmas that influenced Swami Akhandananda ji. What a biography of various Mahatmas that he came across. It's a very rich life, really speaking, of meeting different people, observing their lifestyle, authenticating their knowledge, gaining from them, making progress, all of those kinds of things. And in my life I had only just seen a couple of Mahatmas, Swami Chinmayananji and Swami Dayananji. But this gave me an insight into dozens, if not multiple dozens of Mahatmas. And it is not just a biography of this person was born here and so on. It is their personal views of how they thought, how they behaved, and so on. And I've done about 60% of it. I read that every night before I go to bed. Remarkable. In those, what I found was there were a couple of key insights that were re-emphasized again and again. And so that becomes a core of what I need to do, what I should be doing in order to clarify the knowledge of the self. All of us are really on that path. This verse that we are going to now see is one of the core principles of the thinking and the behavior of all the Mahatmas. All the Mahatmas, not just one, common. And we will go into this in more detail, but let me just state it. I've already stated that, if you remember. And it's not as though it is something new that we didn't know about. But it is the emphasis. It's the way it is communicated. It is a confirmation that yes, this is a very key step. It's a reconfirmation. Because we have seen it here and there, as we will see. Anyway, before, without any more elaboration, the advice that is central to all of these things that Swami Akhandananda ji pointed out, and it's given in this book itself, is develop a habit to inquire into not what is seen. Seen means experience, not just by eyes, but all the senses. Not just seen, but by which it is seen. This is the advice. Very simple. And one, you'll say, you're making such a big deal out of it, that's it? This is all there is? Yes, this is all there is. But if you really think about it, we don't do it. We don't do it for lots of reasons. One of them is, so what? The variety and the experiences, this is what life is all about. And by which all these experiences and varieties are shown, there's nothing much about it. We're missing out a huge point. If you want freedom in life, you have to understand the importance of shifting our attention into the inquiry of what lights up these things. There's so much depth into it once we start talking about it, that we are unaware of it in the beginning. It looks very trivial. But in the end, really speaking, it is remarkable. Just absolutely remarkable. I mean, as a simple example, I mean, there's so much more to be talked about on this, that the whole process of dreaming, the entire episode of dreaming is remarkable one, really. We've talked about this, how important it is in our life. Because, again, it's one of those things, you don't think much about a dream. You say, oh, well, so what? There's nothing. And if anything, you try to analyze it, overanalyze. Why did I have that experience, this, that, or the other? And that's all to the end of it. And then you dismiss it and say, there's nothing. But really speaking, the analysis of the entire process of dreaming is where the treasure of our life is. Just a very quick example, that if you understand how the knowledge, jnanam, by the way, over time, this is not going to happen over time, but I'm going to replace the word consciousness with jnanam, with samvit, just say knowledge, the essence of knowledge, not knowledge of something, but the very essence of knowledge. This is the best way to look at the Atma, look at yourself, your own reality. Again, as I've mentioned it before, the translation into a different language is saying consciousness, really diminishes the importance of it. And the right word, which also needs to be embellished, it's not completely done until you define it, is jnanam. And I say this with a lot of thought behind it, not casually. I'm not just putting it out. If you look at the essential nature by which we have to understand our true self, it is jnanam. So anyway, you can say that for the time being, we will use it interchangeably, the conscious I, or the consciousness, or jnanam, or drik, the seer. You can use those kinds of words. But if you look at the phenomena of dreaming, it is really remarkable to see how the jnanam manufactures plurality. How does it manufacture? Where does it come from? Where is it stored? And more importantly, how does it illuminate? And then even more importantly, how does it all disappear? Leave it just jnanam alone. Maybe a memory, I dreamt. You can't even recall the details. So all I was pointing out is that developing the skill, I think I used the word habit before, but maybe habit is not the right word. Skill is a better word. Developing the power and the skill of analyzing and understanding not what is seen, but how it is seen, is the crux of the clarity of the self. And this occurs over and over again in describing the success of the Mahatmas and what really makes them tick and what should make us tick. If we are semi-serious about this, if we are casual and so on, then it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want to. But if you really want to understand, and if you are focused on gaining the goal of life, which is freedom while alive, then this is a door that we must pass through in our life. What is that door? The door is not to focus unnecessarily. If there is something necessary, fine, but unnecessarily just focused on the plurality of what I see, because it just attracts me, because it's what I'm used to. I'm pulled in by the daily occurrences of life and so on. And I'm just struggling with it, and mostly I'm able to be successful and lead a good life and so on, without any effort to even understand how it comes about, who illuminates it, where does it go. And so therefore this is a crucial part of the progress and towards the clarity of life. So now in getting it back to a limited time that we have, which is okay, I'm just going to make sure that it's understood. So in introducing this, on verse number 116, we had just talked about the overall classification of all the Nididhyasanam steps on verse number 102 and 103. But on this Driksthiti, this step of the Nididhyasanam, which is given in verse number 116, 116 says, just to make sure that you are aware of this, and if you have a book, then you can even read this and get yourself tethered back to the ground. Number 116 says, Drishtim Jnanamayim Kritva Pashyet Brahmamayam Jagat Sa Drishti Parama Udara Na Nasau Agra Avalokini. Drishtim Jnanamayim Kritva Pashyet Brahmamayam Jagat Sa Drishtihi Parama Udara Na Nasau Agra Avalokini. So he takes this the yogic view of Driksthiti. So in yoga also it is even in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, it says, focus on the tip of your nose. Yeah, this is a method to bring your thoughts into some focus. And so just like you can watch a flame, and I remember my thoughts went back to it. There was a time, in fact, you know, how all these things, how they are slowly introduced to you, and I was going to talk about the Bhagavad Gita, which I'll do that in the next class in a minute. But I remember when I was working full-time with IBM and also working in the evening, to complete my MBA degree. I was taking classes in the evening, and it was just an overload. And I had this is probably the time where I just was not happy with things, how they're going, because I was working so hard. I couldn't relax. And I took a yoga class at Foothill at Dianza College. I'm talking this about 1967. And I think that yoga class was very useful to me, very useful, because it taught me how to relax. And so this teacher would spend a lot of time on Shavasanam, where you're just lying down as a dead body. And then before that, you had to focus on a flame. And those things really calmed me down and increased my Shraddha towards yoga. So similarly here also, it says, may you focus on the tip of your nose. This is the yogic advice given, and it's a good one, just to initially. Here he says, however, this is Vedantic meditation, Vedantic focus. He says the focus is not, this is not what we want you to do. This may be in the very initial stages, that's okay, but eventually what you need to do is this. What is it that you need to do? Drishtim jnanamayim kritva pashyed brahmamayam jagat sa drishtihi parama udara. Say, may you see the world in jnanamayim drishtim. Jnanamayim drishtim, this is now explained by Swami Akhandananda Ji. Again, I don't think I'm going to go into that until next week. We will now do so. And that is the real, that is the best drishti that you should be really learning. And so, I'll just read you the Hindi paragraph, just to give you the Hindi paragraph, briefly translate it, and then we will explain it in the next week's class. So he says, Jnanamayi drishti parama udara drishti hai. Udara means worth focusing. Parama udara means the best way to focus. The most fruitful. It's called Parama Udara. Jnanamayi drishti Parama Udara drishti hai. इस दृष्टि को दृश्यमयी न करे. Don't make this vision focus on what is to be seen. Drishyamayi. Drishyamayi means what is endowed with what is to be seen. Don't do that. दृष्टि जहाँ जाती है उस दृश्य की प्रधानता न रहने दे. Because he says where your vision is going, don't make it as the primary one. Pradhanata means the primary one. It could be a secondary. Secondary in the sense you're saying, I am illuminating. What are you illuminating? These things. So these things become secondary, but I am illuminating. That becomes the primary. दृष्टि जहाँ जाती है उस दृश्य की प्रधानता न रहने दे. जहाँ से दृष्टि निकलती है उसे प्रधान बनावे, तब यह स्थिति प्राप्त होगी. He says, inquire as to where this drishti is coming from. What is the origin of it? And when you say, what is the origin of it? How is that origin? How does that happen? That sense of inquiry is the real driksthiti, which is the Vedantic step for Nididhyasana. So anyway, we talked quite a bit about that. So with that, I think we're ready to go into some more details about the driksthiti, and we will do that next week. Okay. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita Mritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayantiyam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyantiyam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidussura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. All right, let's resume the study of the Bhagavad Gita. So we will do verse number 25 today. One, two, three, 4, 5. So let us let's chant 5 or 6 verses, starting with verse number 20. Ajo nitya shashvato yam puranaha nahanyate ma hanyamane sharire. Now actually complete the whole thing on number 20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvato yam purana nahanyate hanyamane sharire veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajamavyayam katham sapurushah partha kam ghatayati hantikam vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dahati pavakaha na chainam kledayantyaapaha na shoshayati marutaha अच्छेद्योयम अदाह्योयम अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एवच नित्यः सर्वगतस्थानुः अचलोयम सनातनः अव्यक्तोयम अचिन्त्योयम अविकार्योयम उच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुमर्हसि. That's number 25, so we will do that today. You know, the study of the Veda, study of the Bhagavad Gita is somewhat like, it has such depth in it, so many things to offer, that it is a little bit like the ocean. It think one of the acharyas had given this example, that I really like this example, that the ocean is a very remarkable entity. First of all, it is a very giver of life to us, because that's where the water evaporates from. It is the very source of all the water evaporation, becomes clouds, becomes rain, and then it cinches, it wets the earth, makes the aushadhis come, from which life is grown, and the man and the woman eat it, and from there the ingredients of life are born. So the whole ocean is nothing but the very beginning of this whole cycle of life and death. So this is ocean. But you can also just swim in the ocean and just be on the surface, so to speak. Whenever you go to some Hawaii or something, the kids just love the waves and, the sound of it, just on the surface. Then, if you are a scientist, you can go deeper into the ocean and get so much more out of it. They say, I think I heard it somewhere, that human beings have already codified, I don't know the exact figure, but more than 90% of all life above the ground. And conversely, we have only codified less than 10% of the life below, living in the sea. There is so much more that we need to understand. So the depth of the ocean is just remarkable. The Bhagavad Gita is something like that. Because I was thinking about it the other day. When I first started my study of Vedanta, it was obviously given some help. The yoga class that I took was very helpful. Reading the autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda was very helpful. But one thing I remember was that I didn't have a shraddha towards a lot of things that are from India, because our things are broken and dirty and overcrowded and so on. So when I came to this country, everything good was here and not so much good was there back in India, except for the Bhagavad Gita. I always thought I need to really understand this. So my first introduction to the Gita was due to Shraddha alone. Just Shraddha. That I think there is something there that I need to investigate. And Shraddha is very important. Because unless you have Shraddha, you're not going to get started on things. But my first few readings with Swami, with Radhakrishnan-ji's Gita and so on, were just purely Shraddha. Shraddha meaning I didn't really understand much of it. How can you say that you're deathless? Nothing will, Veda Vinashinam Nityam Ajam Avyayam, etc. Shraddha alone, but no understanding. Excuse me. So one understanding was Shraddha. Then slowly it became Shravanam. Shravanam meaning, as you know, so Shravanam also doesn't mean just listening. That's not it. Shravanam meaning Tatparya Nishchaya. One should understand that. The meaning of Shravanam is Tatparya Nishchaya. Tatparya Nishchaya means the ascertainment of the essence of Vedic knowledge. What is it saying? What is the essence of it? All said and done, there are so many books and Upanishads and Prakarana Granthas and so on, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, all those kind of vast literature. Do they all saying different things, or is there saying something whose essence I can get? This is Shravanam. So the next time that I studied Bhagavad Gita was under the tutelage of Swami Dayanandji at the ashram in 79 to 82. And there I got an idea of this Shravanam. So another involvement of the study of the Gita is not just Shraddha but Shravanam. Then comes Mananam. Same study, but now the insight into removing any pockets of doubt is the next study of the same Gita. It's not as though the words are any different for others, but because of the advancement of your own preparation, you have different aspects of it. It's the same ocean. If you're not a scientist, then you can just enjoy the waves. But if you become knowledgeable, then you can take a dive underneath and understand what are the creatures that live there, how do they live there. They're remarkable. They're creatures who have never seen the light of light, and they are alive and all in darkness. Amazing. So the second third foray. First is Shraddha, second one is Shravanam, the third one is Mananam. But the Mananam is not the end of it. There's also Nididhyasanam. And also another way for Gita, which is unique to Gita, is the day-to-day living. Karma is a yoga. Clarity about bhakti and karma and jnanam, another thing. There's just so much depth in it. Having said all that, we should know what we are doing now. Very clearly, with the help of Swami Shankarananda, we are doing Mananam. That's what we're doing. Shravanam, I think you have done before. I have also done it. You've also done it, and so on. But what we are currently engaged in this particular set of classes, is with the help of a Mahatma like Swami Shankarananda, he gives us the connections, the continuity, the filling up of the gaps, the putting the pieces of the puzzle together, so that we are now more convinced about the message than we ever were before. That's the end of the Mananam. Removing doubts. That's what we're doing. So having done that, let's go into the actual study, which we finished with the verse number 24. Put my glasses on. I think I can see less and less clearly as I become older. I almost need glasses. This is a very fine print. Okay. So these connections are best given in the introductory passages. So let's read that. And I think one of the side benefits of taking this Shankaranandaji's commentary is also to focus in on Sanskritam. So if those of you that are are studying Sanskritam or know Sanskritam, then this is a good exercise for us to go through. This is an additional, not the main focus, but it's also an important byproduct. So let's read this paragraph which introduces verse number 25, and it's given on page 73 of this book. It says, Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanat atmani vigyate shoka nivrittihi atma vigyanam tu atma anatma shodhanam vina na siddhyati iti shodhanam upakramya vasamsi iti sthula shariratvam atmanah pratipadya nainam chindanti shastrani iti छेदादेह अविषयत्वे प्रतिपादिते सूक्ष्मकारणायोः शास्त्रादेह अविषयत्व संभवात् तत्र आत्मत्वबुद्धिः स्यात् सामाभूत इति अव्यक्त अचिन्त्य पदाभ्यां तत् भिन्नत्वं प्रतिपादयन् अविकार्यत्वं च वदन् एतत् लक्षणम् आत्मानं विदितवतः तव न पुनः शोकः युक्तः इति उपक्रान्तम् उपसंहरति अव्यक्त इति. All one sentence. Can you believe it? The whole paragraph is just one sentence. And so let's break it down to see how. So he says, Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanat. So, iti shravanat. So, this is fifth case, iti shravanat. What is shravanat? Tarati shokam atmavit. He says it is said. Where is it said? In the Shastra, Shravanat. Shruti, Smriti, right? Shruti, Smriti are two complete segments. So Shruti is apaurusheya, not made by human beings. It comes from, it's always there. The Vedas are always there. You cannot say this is created by Ishvara. It is in fact the very body of Ishvara. So it's not created. The Ishvara has always been there, and Vedas have always been there also. So this is called Shruti. So all the Upanishads, Vedas, etc. are called Shruti. That's why it's called Shravanat. From that, what is it said? Tarati shokam atmavit. He says, it clearly says that the one who knows one's own self crosses over all problems in life. Nothing bothers. So this is the phalam. What we are studying is not trivial. This is the door to the ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom means that nothing will touch you. Not even death. Not even... So the death is given by the word shoka. So shoka, as you know, means sorrow. Not just dukkham, but shokam. So tarati shokam atmavit. He says this is what is said in the Shastra. Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanat atmanihi vigyate. Atmani vigyate. So here the word vigyate is further translated by the let me make sure that one second. Yeah. Oh my God, that's what I thought. So this is now translated into Hindi. This verse that the passage we are studying is translated into Hindi. And I thought I remembered this, but just wanted to double check it. It is translated by no other than Yativara Shri Bhole Baba. Bhole Baba. This Bhole Baba is considered to be a Mahatma. And God has given him to translate the Sanskrit into Hindi. Amazing quality. And if you look at the Brahma Sutra Bhashya that we studied, if you look at those volumes of Brahma Sutra, it's also translated by Bhole Baba. I'm very happy to be reminded that the Hindi translation of that is also done by Bhole Baba. Why I'm making a big deal out of it? Because of the translation of the word Vijñāte. So I'll just read the Hindi translation for just a second if you allow me to. Now I'm reading the same I won't read the whole paragraph, but just the first part of it. आत्मज्ञानी शोक को तर जाता है, इत्यर्थ का श्रुति से ज्ञात होता है कि आत्मा का अपरोक्ष ज्ञान होने पर शोक निवृत्त हो जाता है. And now he has translated Vijñāte by saying aparoksha jnanam. This is very significant. Just to do the mananam, to put all of the doubts into a context, this is very significant. Why is it significant? Because the word Vijñāte is used very particularly by Swami Shankarananda ji. How? Vijnanam means aparoksha jnanam in the context of the Bhagavad Gita. Jnanam means possibly paroksha jnanam. Jnanam can also be multiple meanings. It is the very meaning of the self itself, as we saw in the first part of this class. But here in, I think, I forget the name of I think it's 6th or 7th chapter, somewhere there, he says Jnana Vijnanam. So it means both Paroksha Jnanam as well as Aparoksha Jnanam. Paroksha Jnanam means what? Paroksha Jnanam means that you are convinced that yes, there is the Atma, there is a Drik, there is a Drishya, there is Brahman, which is the very nature of all the world. All of that is Paroksha Jnanam. You first have to understand that. Then comes a much bigger step. It is not Paroksha Jnanam, but myself. Aparoksha Jnanam. This is called Vijñāte. Okay? So now we can see the sense of this paragraph. Okay? He says, I'll go back to the Sanskritam now. Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanad atmani vijñāte. You can add the word sati. So the sati means, it is called sati saptami. This being so is called sati saptami. That atmani vijñāte sati shoka nivritti. See, this is the meaning. Listen to this carefully. He says, Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanat. All the Upanishads say that unless you know Atma, you are not going to be free of all the problems in life. That is given. That's the quotation, Tarati shokam atmavit iti shravanat. But what does it mean? It means Atmani vijñāte sati. Only when you have aparoksha jnanam you becomes Atmavit. It's not just any other knowledge, but your own knowledge about yourself. Vijnate sati shoka nivrittihi. Okay, all right, this is one part. Now let's go to the next part. It says, Atma Vijnanatvam Atma Anatma Shodhanam Vinana Siddhyati. Beautiful. He says, one step at a time. Shokam Tarati Atmavit is first step. That can only comes from Aparoksha Jnanam. And the Aparoksha Jnanam comes from a Shodhanam. Shodhanam means Viveka between Atma and Anatma. Unless you go through the steps of what are the two things that are mixed up and how to separate them, the one which is constant and the one that is changing. Atma Anatma Shodhanam Vina na Siddhyati. What is not Siddhyati? It is not established. Shoka Nivrittihi. Shoka Nivrittihi can only come from Aparoksha Jnanam. And the Aparoksha Jnanam cannot be done without Atma Anatma Shodhanam Vinana Siddhyati. Then comes the next one. Tat Shodhanam Upakramya. That process of doing Viveka, Shodhanam means Shuddhikaranam, separating, very clearly separating. It's called Shodhanam. Tat Shodhanam Upakramya. So, now the Bhagavad Gita had started that Shodhanam. And how did it start the Shodhanam? By doing Sthula Shariram Atmanaha Pratipadya. Pratipadya means that having explained first the obvious. What is the obvious? Sthula Sharira. So Sthula Sharira means the gross body. So how did it get started? It got started in, what are the verses? Let's see. Okay, that's not 21, 22. It starts with, it could have even started even earlier, but specifically the 22 talked about Sthula Sharira. How does it talk about? Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani gridnati naroparani. He says, just like you put on a new covering because the old covering has become useless or dirty and it's torn. Similarly, Sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. So here Sthula Sharira Deha is talked about. This is the Upakramya. Upakramya means what? Remember the Shadlinga Vichara. Upakrama Upasamharaha. Beginning and the end. It has to be started and it has to be wrapped up in the end. So here the beginning was Tat Shodhanam Upakramya. In fact, I didn't even have to go back. It says Vasamsi iti Sthula Shariratvam Atmanaha Pratipadya Nainam Chindanti Shastrani iti. He says, having started the topic of you are not the body, because the body can be cut or it can be burned. or it can be wetted. And just like your clothing can be wet, can be cut, it can be torn, whatever it is, but it doesn't affect you because it's a covering which is separate from you. It may touch you, that's okay. It may feel like that is you. Most people will see you with your clothes on, but it has nothing to do with you. It is just the outer covering. Nainam chindanti shastrani iti chedadehe avishayatve pratipadite. He says that the pratipadite means it has already been explained that the Atma is not the Vishaya of Chedanam. Because what is Chedanam is done on the Sharira, not to the Atma. You are the very knower of the Atma. Then he says, this is the key part of explaining verse number 25. He says now, because up to this point was what? Sthula Sharira. Now comes Sukshma Sharira. And so I will just give you an introduction to the rest of this paragraph. What it says is that Sri Krishna doesn't want Arjuna to only focus on the Sthula Sharira. That if my body is, if I take care of the body, then my shokam will be gone. Because there is one more step that needs to be done, which is that as long as you are thinking you are the Sukshma Sharira, there also your shoka will come. In fact, most of our shoka in life comes from Sukshma Sharira, not Sthula Sharira. If your Sthula Sharira gets hurt or something like this, you can deal with it. It doesn't happen all that much. Most of the problems we have is mental. That person doesn't like me, and I'm losing my job, and this, that, or the other, all kinds of things. My family, health. So this is the all Linga Sharira, all Sukshma Sharira. So he says that up to now, the Gita has focused on the Sthula Sharira, but he should not be misunderstood by Arjuna that Sukshma Sharira also does not cause Shokam. It causes Shokam, and you have to separate yourself from it. This is why the verse number 25 is given. So he says, with that introduction I can read it. Nainam chindanti shastrani. Sorry, now I kept saying shastrani. It is a mistake on my part. Nainam chindanti shastrani iti chedadehe avishayatve patipadite. Again you can add the word sati. Sati saptami. Sukshma karanayoho shastradehe avishayatva sambhavat tatra atmatva buddhina syat. He says, even though we have talked about the Sthula Sharira, but it should not be misunderstood that the Sukshma Sharira and the Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira is the mental problems, and Karana Sharira is the cause of the mental problem, which is Ajnanam. So he says, Sukshma Sharira Karanayoho Shastradehe Avishayatva Sambhavat. He says, maybe Arjuna might think, because he has to be taught, he hasn't been taught yet, he might mistakenly think that perhaps the Bhagavad Gita is only talking about Sthula Sharira, not the Sukshma Sharira. So he says, Shastradehe Avishayatva Sambhavat, because there is a possibility that it is the Vishaya of Shastra. Atmatva buddhi na syat. May you do not have an Atmatva buddhi even in the Sukshma Sharira. Sa ma bhoot. May that not happen. Iti. Now this verse is given. Iti avyaktadi avyakta achintya padabhyam tad bhinnatvam pratipadayan avikaryatvam cha vadan etat lakshanam atmanam viditavataha tavana punaha shoka yuktaha iti upakramtam upasamharati. So here is the end. He says it started by Sthula Sharira, and with the help of this verse now the Sukshma Sharira is also included, and so therefore you have to think about your separation from both of them, not just from Sthula Sharira. So that this verse is now given, which says Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryo aymuchyate tasmadevam viditva enam na anushochitum arhasi. So he says the Atma is different from Linga Sharira. Linga Sharira means that from where, so this word Linga Sharira, the word Linga is an important one, interesting one. Linga means by which it is known. It's a hint. So Linga Sharira is used for Sukshma Sharira. Why is the word Linga used for Sukshma Sharira? Because you do not see it clearly, but doesn't mean it is not there. In fact, it is there. This is what we deal with. When we talk to somebody, certainly the voice of the person is there, the body of the person is there, but what really touches me are the thoughts of the person. What's behind it? And so it is a hint of the person. It's a method to understand the reality of the person, even though I don't see it. This is the reason for it's called Linga Sharira. So that's what it is saying. It says, Atma is different from the Linga Sharira. Linga Sharira means that Atma is different from thoughts, expressions, attitudes, voice, of course. All those things that I take them to be reality and my own, and so not only others but my own thoughts, my attitudes, my conclusions, my aspirations, my fear, regrets, all those kinds of things become me. But I don't understand yet until I do the viveka that I am actually separate from it. Those are just waves that I am the very water of the ocean, and those things are waves of my water. I have nothing to do with it. Yes, I can enjoy it if I want to, but I am something beyond that. I am at a higher degree of reality. I am not the mithya. I am the very satyam. So this is what he says, avyaktoyam achintyoyam. Means that I am not the object of thoughts, and I am not, avyakta is a very important verse, by the way, a word. Avyakta is a very important verse. And This is just an amazing. And I remember when I was teaching the Dakshinamurti Stotram, and in the explanation by Swami Maheshanandji on Dakshinamurti Stotram, the very first verse, if you go back, you can see this. So he says every verse has one important thing to convey, and the first verse is avyakta. And I remember reading that commentary, and it really became very clear to me, and an important step in the understanding. You see, the Atma, one of the difficulties of, I wouldn't say difficulties, I think maybe that's the wrong word, because the difficulty means that it's very difficult. That's not what I want to convey. I remember Swami Dayanandji's advice on this. He says, the understanding of the Atma is neither difficult nor easy. And this is explained very well by Swami Akhandanandaji. We will study that sometime. It is not sadhya and sadhana, it is siddha. It is already there. So one should not worry about when am I going to understand. It is understood already. And the clarity will come slowly and it's okay. It will take its time. So in that manner, what really was very helpful to me was the word avyakta. So avyakta means that my understanding of myself, I'm looking at the wrong way at myself. Why am I looking at the wrong way with myself? Because I am used to dealing with vyakta only. This is the issue. This is the issue that we have to really be very clear about. Because I am only dealing with things that are visible to me. And that includes my self-estimation. Who am I? My self-estimation also is based on visibility of myself. I don't feel well. I am struggling. I'm feeling better. All of these kinds of things is vyakta, vyakta, vyakta. So, my self-estimation is flawed because it only deals with things that are vyakta. Vyakta means one which is objectifiable, which is visible not just by eyes but through various senses. This is what vyakta means. So I am criticizing myself, or I am fearful for myself, I am impatient for myself only from the standpoint of something that I am not. I have nothing to do with it. Why? Because I am avyakta. Yeah, I am avyakta. How am I avyakta? It is something like if there's water in the ocean, which water, of course, to a onlooker, it has some form, some color, some fluidity and so on. But look at it from the standpoint of the water. The water itself cannot see itself. It can only see the waves in it. Just imagine something like this. This is not a inappropriate example. I think it can be seen to be appropriate. So if you were the water and you don't know yourself, you only see the waves, and your estimation is, this is exactly what we talk about, a wave of the ocean who is not knowledgeable. And so you tell the person, don't you know you are the very water, you're not the wave. And the person says, what? I am what? He says, you are the water. He says, what water? I don't understand the water. All I can see is I'm moving around and I'm disappearing. Tell me about that. He says, I am not talking about the movement and the waves. He says, what else are you talking about? I'm talking about you. Me? So my estimation is only in terms of my visibility of the wave. It's really exactly the same way. So I am looking for myself at the wrong places. And if I say, my God, I am, and this is what, when we studied the Kena Upanishad and that important third verse, what it said was, don't you see, and so that's also talked about avyakta. Don't you see that you are behind all the waves? You're behind everything. And everything is not possible without you. Don't you see this? At first I don't. What? Everything is possible without me? Nothing is possible without me? How? Just think about it. Just calm down. Look. You are the avyakta, which is always there. Why do you want to see yourself as a particular visible thing? Yeah, because that's what I'm used to doing. This is the fact that I am never a drishya, I'm forever a drik, is a very important part of this whole thing, and this is captured in this word avyaktoyam, achintyoyam. Achintyoyam here means that you are not the object of thoughts. Avikaryoyam. Avikaryoyam means there is no vikara, there is no change. You're always avyakta, always the same, you've always been there, ajam. We'll continue to focus on this. So he says, tasmad evam viditva enam na anushochitum arhasi. He says, you do not deserve to grieve, Arjuna, because you are not touched by, I know you may have some thoughts about your teachers and your cousins and who are dying and so on, but they are not the object of the thoughts. They are untouched by it. So any shoka that you have, why you don't want to fight, is unwarranted. Na shochitum arhasi. This arhasi word is a very interesting one. Arhasi means you deserve, it's appropriate, is called arhasi. Na arhasi means it's inappropriate. Doesn't apply to you at all. So that's what it is. And so this was all we did was the introduction to this. And then so in the actual, where are we, 10:19. Yeah, I think we can do this. Then we can complete this verse. So in looking at the verse itself, I think we've already explained some of it. One thing to look at this is the explanation of the word avikarya, which occurs in this verse number 25. Avikaryoyam ayam avikaryaha ayam uchyate. So on page 74, on the third line, it starts with a brief explanation of what avikarya means. Okay, so let's look into that. And what it goes over is the explanation of what can be done, what is possibility of karma. And you must know this by now, or you at least hope you do know by now, that there are 4 things that are possible to be done. We have studied it elsewhere. So one is called avikaryam, one that can be changed is called vikaryam, one that cannot be changed is called avikaryam. Another one is utpadyam. Utpadyam means something that is born, that is created. Is called utpadyam. Anutpadyam means that cannot be created. The third one is anapyam. Apyam means one that can be reached. Anapyam means that one is not reached. And the fourth one, the last one, is samskaryam. And so what cannot be done through samskara is called asamskaryam. Now let's look at all 4 of them. So in our life, this is a very important thing this is what is in Sureshwacharya's Naishkarmya Siddhi. So these things are talked about, that the Atma is not the object of any karma. You cannot do anything about the Atma. You need not do anything about the Atma, and you cannot do anything about the Atma. Why is that? There are 4 reasons. Let's look at the 4 things that are possible to be quote unquote done. What can be done? And this is an important thing because in our life, our basic attitude is, I am not happy yet. I need to do something about it. Everything is based on doing. Atma is never going to be possible to be done by anything. Why not? Why? Because let's analyze what is possible to be quote unquote done. 4 things. One is, you can modify it. You can change something. You can modify it. You can, you have, let's say, color of a cloth that you don't like. You can change the color of it by putting another color on it. Something is a little tight. you can expand it. So these are all called changes, modifications. That is called vicarium. Avicarium means that it does not have a form, so it cannot be changed. So this is the first one. Then the second one is maybe something can be created. I'm not changing it, but I'm creating it. So out of other things, you put it together as a brand new object. And so Arambha, this is what is called Arambhavada. So you can start something. Atma cannot be started. Why? Because why can't Atma be started? Because what has to be started must have some parts to it. And Atma doesn't have any parts to it. You cannot start space. You cannot modify space, you cannot start space. This is number 2. Then number 3, apyam. Something can be reached. Like supposing you want to go to San Francisco. You're not changing San Francisco. You're not creating San Francisco. But you can reach San Francisco. So this is the object of doing something. Again, Atma cannot be reached because you're already the Atma. You are the very thing that you are seeking. So there's no question of reaching it. Anapyam. The last one is samskaryam. Samskaryam means to purify it. To purify it. And to something which is dirty can be purified. Again, that cannot be done because the Atma is not an object, doesn't have any parts to it. So these are the 4 different aspects of it. This is given as an explanation of this verse, starting with the 3rd line of page 74. So I'll very quickly, I'm running out of time, so I won't take too much time, but I want to finish this. So let me read it first, and then I'll explain it. Avikaryascha niravayavatvat atma ayam vikritehe avishayatvena avikaryaha. So he says, starting with the first of the 4 possibilities of doing, avikaryascha niravayavatvat atmanaha ayam vikretehe avvishayatvena avikarya. So he says, because it is niravayava, there's no avayava, there's no parts to it. Therefore, vikretehe avvishayatva. It is not the subject of vikara. You cannot change something which doesn't have any parts, like the akasha. Okay, number 1. Purastat siddham hi brahma iti. I missed a line. Avikaryaha iti anutpadyatvadinam atma dharmanam upalakshanam. So he says that avikarya also includes anutpadyam. It cannot be created. So that is also, it is covered. Utpadyam is also covered by the word avikarya because it is upalakshanam. Upalakshana means that it is secondarily also applies to utpadyam. Therefore, the word vikara covers 2 of them. Avikaryam, anutpadyam. Then comes the 3rd one. Na anyaha ataha asti vigyata. Sorry, I missed a line again. So he explains this anutpadyam by giving it sanction from the Upanishads. He says, Purastat siddham hi brahma iti shravanat anadi siddhatvat atma ayam anutpadya. Purastat iti siddham brahma. That Brahma is already there. It was not possible to be created. So it is anutpadyam. Then the next one, which is apyam. Na anyaha ataha asti vijnata iti shravanat jnatuhu swarupatvat anapya. Again, as I mentioned before, you're not going to reach it because you are already the very Atma that you are. So, anyaha asti vijnata. There is nothing other than vijnata alone. And so there is nothing else that you have to reach. That doesn't apply. Then the last one, Shuddha abadhya swarupaha buddha sukhaswarupaha iti shravanat nitya shuddhatvat atma ayam na samskaryaha. So he says you cannot purify it because it is the ultimate purity itself. It is very nature of purity. How else are you going to purify it? So therefore, this verse number 25 talks secondarily about the fact that Atma you cannot do anything about it. It is already there. So really you have to understand it rather than to do anything about it. So that's the verse number 25. And we will begin a new next section, number 26 next time. Om Asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor mahamritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Iti Shravanat Ana. Good to see you all. Wonderful. So a couple of announcements. One is that we have just started a new satsang group that you know, and so this is the way all of us can communicate. I think I'll keep the class AVC students WhatsApp group intact. I think Chandra had a question as why do we need that anymore? The reason is that there's about 110 people, and many of them are not in the US, they are spread all over the world, and really many of them are just interested in the class itself, not any other AVC activities. So I think the AVC activities will be more for, I wouldn't say exclusively, but mostly for the local people, and there's a lot of stuff going on, so I think that it'll be good to separate those two, Chandra. I was going to write to you, but hopefully this will be sufficient. Then the second thing is that I had asked you for the sign-ups to the for the retreat in May, and so far I only see 6 people who have signed up. And so I'm going to make a little bit of an attempt to see if you are still interested. If not, then I have a feeling that less than 15 people or so, it would be difficult to justify. The ashram is a very beautiful facility, very useful facility, and for us to occupy it for a full week with so few people does not do justice to it. So my plan is that I will make one other attempt to see if you are sitting on the border and you may come, and if so, then by, let's see, where are we? I think by the end of February we will decide whether we will even go through with it or not. So that's the second part. Then just yesterday, Chawla Joshi had talked about a visit by Swami Paramatmananda of Rajkot in April. So I think it will be good to have Swamiji here for some talks, and so some work is going on to arrange for that. If you would like to please help with the setup of the talks and so on, that will be wonderful, and certainly you are invited to attend those classes. So that will be wonderful. So those things, and then any other feedback that you have, I would appreciate it. Great, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.